Okay, guys, I'm going to try this for a third and final time. I got about 10 minutes in the last video or last recording, and it didn't. It kind of glitched out on me. I'm not sure what's going on with it. I am working with an older computer that I have here at home, but hopefully this will work. I'm going to run through this material as quickly as I can, simply because it is late, and I realize that you guys, I value your time as much as I value mine. So I'm going to try to get this through to you guys. I'm going to go relatively quickly. I'm also going to post these notes so that you guys have access to both the notes as well as my lecture on the notes. And you can do with that information what you see fit. Hopefully, you decide to kind of take the notes down, because these are fair game, by the way, for the final. So anything that I talk about here, anything that's shown, is 100% optional for me. I did have it presented as a full screen, which is the way that I prefer to do this. Unfortunately, like I said, it was glitching out. It just wasn't really working very well. So I'm going to redo this, and I'm going to keep it as this kind of like open screen here. Hopefully it'll still work out, and you guys will still get good stuff out of it. So we were talking about survivorship curves, and I wanted to talk about metapopulations. Metapopulation is a group of spatially distant populations that are connected by occasional movements. Guys, I know that you can read that definition, but let me just kind of give you a better understanding of what that is. A lot of especially like top predators, they won't live in family units. They'll live kind of in their own territory, where they hunt, primarily. And one of the things that they need is the ability to move in from one place to the next, along what are called corridors. These are strips of habitat, that just act as kind of like a highway, getting those organisms from one place to another. And the problem that they have is that these metapopulations are growing because we keep intersecting their corridors. We keep dividing up their habitat with things like roads, or when it comes to an aquatic system, things like dams. We're putting these barriers in their way, that are making these corridors more important and less likely to be seen. Less often are they shown, because again we're kind of breaking them down through the process of just developing these areas that were once kind of natural habitat. A good example of this is cougars. Cougars actually used to roam southern Illinois, and they're found in southern parts of Missouri now. That's about as high up as they get. Really, Illinois is completely devoid of them. A big part of their decrease, of course, is habitat destruction, overhunting, fear, just general fear of them. And it has forced them into the most kind of remote regions of the globe. They're found, one of the reasons why they're called mountain lions is because they're found up in the mountains. Now, are they found there because it's the best habitat? No, not at all. It's really not. They're found up there because people aren't up there, and they have grown kind of worrisome of us, and they're very tentative, are very cautious, I should say, around us. So these corridors of connectedness are incredibly important. And what they do more than anything is, honestly, they provide opportunities for travel to find mates, because without them, the genetic diversity of these organisms goes down dramatically, because they just don't have access to individuals to procreate with. So it's become, and that is a necessary part of their survival and the survival of their species. So you guys can kind of see, and honestly, this is just a little image, but this right here is a really cool website. It takes you to real-time data of tagged specimen, like tagged organisms that are out in the wild, that are moving around. The tags have radio transmitters in them, so they're able to kind of cast back kind of where they are, their approximate location, and they can track where they go. And this is where this data has really kind of shined a light on how important these corridors truly are. Now, not only are corridors important, but who these organisms interact with through those corridors, through their own kind of region, through their own habitat, is also very important. And ecological kind of relationships kind of boil down into three major components: either competition, predation, or symbiotic relationship. By the way, guys, like I said, I value your time. I am going to go through this relatively quickly, because it's late, and I'm sure you guys want to listen to this just as much as I kind of want to record it. But I do think it's important for you to have it. So if I am going too fast, feel free to slow me down. Feel free to pause the video anytime that you need to. Now, I'm not going to show this video here for the sake of time, but it does show the competition that is related to this particular salamander. It's a giant salamander, and another salamander that's coming in trying to take its burrow. So it's a competition for shelter. Ecosystems, as you guys are aware, are where a species live. It's the community of organisms that exist within, or that the species exists in, and the physical environment. So it's a combination of, like I said, biotic and abiotic factors that both play a part in how that organism is able to survive. Physical factors are things like abiotic things like rocks, water, sand, sunlight, temperature. Again, depending on what organism you are, these are incredibly important. All organisms need things like water, of course, the correct climate and temperature. But even things like rocks and sand can become important to certain organisms. So these play a drastic role. And by the way, this is not an all-encompassing list. This list could be a mile long. Living factors, of course, it is the relationships that organisms share. And we're going to talk about what some of those relationships, how they kind of form and what shape they take. But they include anything that's alive: snakes, spiders, fish, humans, dead animals are usually included in biotic factors because they once were living. So a lot of the ways that they interact, these different species, is through competition. There's a principle called the competitive exclusion principle. This is the idea that the two species cannot exist with the same niche. Okay, they cannot exist and try to create for themselves this job essentially, and have the same job. And it's the same for like a company. Like you can't have redundancies in a company, right? If one person, there's no company with like two chief executive officers, right? Two CEOs. There's only one usually in one company because two would be redundant. Two would be one too many. And it's true with species as well. If there's an organism that is, or species rather, that is surviving off of one particular niche in a given region, there's a good chance that another species is not able to partake in that same niche, partake in that same job, eat that same food resource. And one of the reasons for that is because of resource partitioning. Two species divide a resource based on differences in the species' behavior and morphology. So the way that they get a past competitive exclusion principle is by changing themselves through resource partitioning. And there's three ways that they do that. They do that temporally, which is reduce competition of resources by using the same resources at different times. Okay, so if, like, let's say a species of swift, like birds, are going to go and they're going to eat insects. Okay, flying insects. They're going to fly in. They're going to consume them. They're going to do that during the day. Now, to avoid competition with bats who might eat the same insects, the bats are going to go out at night. That is temporal resource partitioning. There's also spatial resource partitioning, where we're reducing competition for a resource by utilizing different habitats. So if you think about the tree canopy, right? Certain monkeys, for example, are going to reside at the very tops of the tree, the high up in the canopy, while other monkeys might be lowland, where they don't even climb trees at all. They're underneath the canopy. This is them utilizing different areas within an ecosystem. And then there's, of course, morphology, which is the most tied to evolution. This reduces competition of resources by involving different body sizes or shapes. If you think of Darwin's finches, that was a morphological resource partitioning. They would change their beaks in order to take on and consume different food resources. That was them taking advantage of all of the resources within that the Galapagos Island, and allowing for such a diverse range of species of those finches. Here's just an example of spatial resource partitioning. The tar bush will go much farther down, basically getting same resources from a different area of the soil. Here is the morphology of a black-footed ferret and an ermine. They're going to consume different things. Hence, you can see, even though they're very similar species, you can see the different morphology of them. Obviously, the black-footed ferret's going to consume much larger prey. Okay, now that brings us to this idea of predator-prey relationship. One species acts as a resource for another. The prey evolves to evade and defend. The predator evolves to locate and subdue. And it's this constant, like cat and mouse game, literally prey and predator game, where one evolves to be faster, so the other evolves to be stronger. One evolves to be more cunning. The other evolves camouflage to blend in. It's just this constant kind of back and forth. The faster a prey gets faster and better eludes their foe, like I said, predators evolve a more cunning way to capture their prey. Guys, it is truly a vicious world. Nature is a vicious place, and in order for things to live, other things have to die, and that's just truth. Okay, one example of eluding is through camouflage. I would assume, I can't remember what type of fish this is. I think it's a flounder, who rests at the bottom. There is a fish there. You can't even see it. It's so well camouflaged. Here's some armor, of course, from the porcupine. This is another video kind of showing some of the adaptations that we have. We have herbivory. Herbivory is when plants consume animals. This is another relationship that some organisms have with others. Herbivores often don't kill plants, though they do harm them, and so plants have developed defense mechanisms like thorns, like poison leaves, things like that protect them. Then there's, of course, symbiotic relationships. These are close relationships between two species where sometimes they benefit, sometimes they don't. Parasites are an example where they don't benefit. Parasite will live off the organism they consume, their host. They rarely kill the host, because if they kill the host, they usually kill themselves. Parasites do often result in disease. They do carry disease, and so there's harm to that host as a result. Parasitoids, they lay eggs inside their organism. Usually wasps are associated with this. Those wasp larvae will then feed off the host until they break out. It's a pretty disturbing thing. This is a great video. I wish I could show it to you guys. Like I said, I'm just trying to keep this video as short as I can. Mutualism is where both species benefit. So plants and pollinators, for example, like obviously honeybees get the benefit of the nectar from the flowers, but they also pollinate the flowers as a byproduct. So it's a mutualistic relationship. This is another great video. I love these videos. I'm sad that I'm missing them. Commensalism is where one species benefits, the other is neither harmed nor helped. The best example I have of that is actually birds in a tree, like nesting in a tree. The birds get the benefit of being up high, away from predators. The tree really doesn't get harmed or benefited. Barnacles on whales. Barnacles don't really affect whales. Fish in coral reefs. Usually they don't bother the reefs, but that reef does provide habitat and shelter for the fish. We talked about keystone species. They play a disproportionate beneficial role in their environment. They usually exist in low numbers. Without the keystone, the entire arch falls down. Ecosystem engineers are another name for this. Beavers are an ecosystem engineer. We're going to do some of the math a little bit later on. I got some scientific notation as well as that doubling rule that we talked about today in class. And we'll do some math with exponential growth as well. That'll probably be when we get back from break. So here's that ecosystem engineer literally creating this beaver's dam. Look how elaborate that is. It's amazing. This beaver's dam created this entire wetland that exists there. Without it, that wouldn't be there. That swelling of that river, that stream rather, wouldn't exist, and the habitat that it creates thus wouldn't exist. All right, so that brings us to the idea of ecological succession. Again, I know I'm going fast, guys, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of information on each one of these things. I love ecological succession. It's basically the replacement of one group or species by another over time, leading to what's called a climax community. This is kind of what it looks like. It starts as exposed rock, lichen comes in, then annual weeds, perennials, small shrubs, then usually fast-growing softwood trees, and then slow-growing, old-growth hardwood trees. Secondary succession, that's primary succession. That's with virgin soil or just rock, parent material. Secondary succession is when you have a disaster, essentially, that completely destroys what was there. And pioneer species come in, these new kind of, again, fast-growing organisms, usually small shrubs, grasses, things like that, and they start the process of re-establishing that community. Usually it's, oh, I wanted to go back to this image because usually it starts with the annual weeds, the perennials. It just basically skips over that parent material, that rock material. Another great video. Lots of good videos in this chapter. I'm really sad that we're missing a lot of them. I'll try to maybe post them. I don't know how much you guys would watch them, but this does happen on aquatic ecosystems as well. And mainly it's through fill-in. Accumulation will settle at the bottom of these lakes. If you guys own a lake, you guys know this to be true. Lake maintenance includes digging a lake out every once in a while to take out that sediment that accumulates. But eventually, a lake will become either a wetland or just completely dry land. And we see this. This is an example. We go to Texas pretty often, and this is where we stay. We stay in South Padre Island. Actually, we stay just outside of South Padre Island. The island is on the other side of a causeway here across the bay. This is where we actually stay on one of these fingers in Port Isabel. And Port Isabel, these channels here are ran by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have to come out and dredge those usually once every 5 to 10 years. And then they use that sand to actually build up the dunes on the island. So it's a benefit to them as well. So species richness of a community is influenced by many factors, and I'm going to go through 4 of those factors real quick. One is latitude. Species richness declines as we move from the equator towards the North and South Pole. The second is time. The longer that particular ecosystem has been around, usually the more opportunity there is for speciation, which results in more speciation. Larger habitats usually have more species. There's more room, there's more resources usually, and so more species are there as a result. Islands can be considered a landmass. The closer islands are to other landmass, excuse me, that's what I'm getting towards. The idea that an island being close to a mainland is usually very beneficial because that means that more species can come and populate that island. So those are also going to impact the amount of species that island will have. This is all in the theory of island biogeography. Which is an amazing kind of study. Make sure that you guys read over that in Chapter 6. You should have already done so. So yeah, as land mass goes up, obviously the number of bird species goes up. All right, guys. I said I'd get it done in under 25. I think I got it done in under 20. So I'm going to stop this. Hopefully, it's been somewhat beneficial to you. But I will post this for you guys, and like I said, this is fair game on the test. If you guys need to go back and kind of pause somewhere and kind of finish the notes on one of the slides, if you didn't get it all, feel free to do so. Guys, thanks so much. I really do appreciate you listening, and hopefully you learned something.